Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Shana Southern. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello, beautiful souls. Today's episode is a part 1 of a part 2 series. So I hope you enjoy listening into part 1. And make sure that you do listen into part 2 when it becomes available as well. Now let's dive in. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today I have with me the lovely Kate Carson. Kate is a certified love, sex, and relationship coach who uses somatic methods to bring women home to their bodies and couples back to each other. She lost her middle daughter, Laurel, to TFMR in 2012 after diagnosis of brain anomalies at 35 weeks of pregnancy. Since then, Kate has changed her career from science, engineering, and education to support grieving parents and fight for abortion access full-time. She lives in Massachusetts with her husband and 2 living daughters. Welcome to the show, Kate. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I think it's a really important, we were talking just before we jumped on, it's a really important place that you've decided to be able to support people. We were talking about, unfortunately going through our experiences, we notice things that are missing. And, for you to shift your career focus to being able to support parents after TFMR, that is I think it's really important. Because it is a underlying thing between, couples, partners after loss, and women and their identity and their body image and how they can learn to trust themselves again. So, I think it's really important to have this conversation, and I'm so glad that you are here with us today to have this. Do you want to share a little bit about your story?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So in 2012, I was pregnant with a second daughter. So I already had a 2-year-old, Elsie, and I was pregnant with this daughter. And it had taken us a while to get pregnant. I had 3 miscarriages on the way. And finally, we were pregnant with a sticky baby. But I had this real feeling of doom and dread over the whole pregnancy. And I kept chalking it up to all of those losses that I had had before. But it ended up, my fears were really realized when I was sent in for an ultrasound when I was 35 weeks pregnant from date of last menstrual period. And they found on that ultrasound that my baby's brain had not developed properly. She had a condition called Dandy-Walker malformation, which is actually a set of 4 brain malformations. And then she also was missing her corpus callosum, which connects the 2 hemispheres of the brain. So these different brain anomalies together led to a pretty poor prognosis for her. The neonatal neurologist told us that she was not expected to walk, talk, support the weight of her head, or even swallow. And I remember getting this diagnosis and I was devastated, right? Just absolutely devastated. But when they started talking about not being able to swallow, I said, okay, well, this is very sad, but we know how this baby is going to die. She'll die of dehydration, she'll die of malnutrition. And they said, oh, no, you can't refuse a feeding tube. So they told me all of the ways this baby was going to die. They said she was going to die of seizure, really bad seizure disorder. Because she couldn't swallow, she was going to aspirate her vomit. There were many, many ways they told me that this disease was going to kill her. And then they said, but we can't let her die because it's a non-fatal diagnosis. And it's such a weird legal political landscape to be in where they're telling you your daughter's going to die. And then they're like, but it's not fatal. So we're going to keep restarting her heart and giving her feeding tubes and all of these things to extend her life. And that just was not while I understand why parents would do it because our babies are precious and we want every moment we can, that was not in line with what I wanted for her or for me. So we ended up traveling to seek abortion care late in this pregnancy, even though this is a American specific thing, but up until recently, there was a law called Roe v. Wade, which protected Americans' rights to abortion up until the date of viability. But because they had told me that her prognosis was non-fatal, I was not covered by that law, even though the law was in place at the time of my loss. So even so, I had to travel 2,000 miles, which is like quite a plane ride, to Colorado from Massachusetts. So from the East Coast to the Rocky Mountains. And there it was legal to release my baby. I do think it's important to talk about the procedure a little, even though it's very upsetting. It's important to me that people know what this looks like. On the first day, it's patient education, making sure I really understand what this is about. And then at the end of the day, I sign my consent with my doctor and he delivers a shot to my baby's heart. And the shot doesn't instantly kill her, but over time, her heart slows and fails. So the first day is like my baby passed in my body. And then there were 2 days of laminaria dilation. So laminaria are these sterile seaweed sticks that they put in your cervix. They put in and leave them in, and they slowly absorb water from your body and dilate the cervix. So I came in after the first day of laminaria, 1 centimeter dilated, and then they took that out and put new ones in. And then I came in the last day, the 4th day, 4 centimeters dilated, which is quite dilated, right? And then at that point, they induced labor. And so I labored and delivered a stillbirth vaginally without anesthesia in this clinic in Colorado, very far from home. And I did choose to view my baby and I did choose to have her cremated. But the very next morning, I had to get on a plane. I just gave birth. I had to get on a plane and go back because I had a 2-year-old waiting for me in Massachusetts. So this loss was not only devastating, also really, really shameful. The way I got cast out of care in my home state and the way I had to go flying through the night and flying back and nobody knew where I was. I hadn't told anybody I was out of state. And it took me a long time to open up about what had happened to me. I started with my best friend and she was wonderful, but very slowly I would tell more and more people. Everybody knew I had had a stillbirth. You know, when you're 35, 36 weeks pregnant, there's no one who doesn't know. Even the grocery store checkout people knew I was pregnant, right? Like everyone knew I was pregnant. Everyone was expecting this baby. And so I sent an email saying, we lost the baby. Basically, the baby was stillborn. And we named her Laurel. She was, she had brain anomalies and she's gone. So I had to sort of come out about it later that I had had some autonomy over how and when she died, that I had had an abortion, 8 months pregnant. This is very taboo stuff. And I didn't know that everyone would support me. I'm very lucky that my community really stepped up and supported me. There's really no one important let me down. No one. And that's like, to this day, I'm grateful for it. I ended up going to a support group online called Ending a Wanted Pregnancy. And I was even afraid to join that support group because I was like, well, they all had abortions, but I killed my baby, right? Like I was really hung up on the dates. It was very hard to have this procedure and take this kind of responsibility at such advanced states of a pregnancy. But they, of course, that's what they're there for. And they welcomed me. And pretty shortly, I was going there to get support day after day. But eventually, what the beauty of support groups is you also give support. And so until I was ready to really be kind to myself, I could be kind to these other mothers and fathers. And that helped me acclimate to being kind to myself. I've been a mod and an administrator of that group for the last 11 years. So I've been with them a long time. It's almost 3,000 people now. It's a really big group. So for people who have had to have an abortion for medical emergency reasons, they can find this group at endingawantedpregnancy.com and apply there. It's on Facebook, which is like, a lot of us would prefer not to be on Facebook anymore, but that's where it is. So, and it's a good group. It's a good group and I'm proud of how we run it and I'm proud of how it is. But more recently in the last couple of years, what I noticed from all of these years of first needing my own support and then seeing literally thousands of women. I mean, my role in that group is to greet people coming through the door and to receive their stories, and everyone's required to share. So I have received thousands of termination for medical reasons stories, thousands. And what I noticed is that there was one area in which all of these mothers and fathers were massively underserved, and it was in sexuality and relationship. It was really in how to relate to their bodies, how to even allow pleasure, and how to reconnect both on a physical and emotional level after pregnancy loss. And I see it not just in termination world. Like I see it in general abortion world. I see it in miscarriage world. I see it acutely in the IVF world, right? So infertility world. So all of these areas of pregnancy loss and baby loss, I see the repercussions in relationship and love and sexuality are huge. And women will say, like, I can't talk to my therapist about it, right? I'm not sure it's true that they can't, but they don't feel like they can. And so they can't, right? Or I just don't know who to turn to about this. And so I went and I studied to be a love, sex, and relationship coach specifically to serve women with tough fertility journeys, like with tough fertility instances, and to serve couples who had, I serve couples who still love each other a lot, but who have been made distant from each other through this and who want to reconnect. It can just get to be so scary and overwhelming when it's been so long and you don't even know how to start, right? So in addition to continuing on a volunteer basis to do support group, I also work as a coach one-on-one and with couples, and occasionally run some groups to help women, to help couples just come home to their bodies and relationships after pregnancy loss.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that and sharing your story. Your story actually gave me goosebumps. I really felt you in having to go almost like, yeah, like you said, you had to leave with sort of without telling anyone, have this procedure, come back without really anyone knowing what it was that was actually going on for you. And I can only imagine, but I don't know, I felt you in that moment, and my heart went out to you in having to go through, like when you explained what actually happened when you were there. It's such a big thing to have to go through without anyone around you, without anyone understanding. But I'm so grateful that you were able to have the support of those, like you said, your community. No one let you down. There was everyone that you expected to step up, stepped up. And I'm grateful for that, because that doesn't happen a lot. And that in itself allows you to navigate your own healing and recovery, because you know that you're in a safe place where you can talk about it with people. And I absolutely agree with you in terms of the relationships, because even though termination wasn't my experience, having a relationship break down over my experience with loss, it was like, we're still, obviously my husband and I are still together. We were able to come back together after our loss, but there was a lot of pain on both of our parts, a lot of grief that my husband didn't express because he didn't know how. And then I was watching him go back and do his normal life. And then I was angry and resentful towards him.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
It's like, why? Why are you going back to work when my life is falling apart? Like, that is not fair.
Yeah. I mean, what are you making this mean, right? Like, what I made it mean is, do you even love our daughter? You don't even love our daughter. I'm a wreck. I'm falling on the floor crying every single day. There's no way I could hold down a job. How can you go to work? You must not even care, which is my issue, not his issue, because that's not what it meant. But that's what it looked like and what it felt like. And it felt so hurtful. And I felt so isolated. I remember going to my in-person support group, which is more general bereavement, general infant loss. And my husband would never in a million years have come with me to a support group, even if I had gotten on my knees and begged. There's just no way. It doesn't serve him. He doesn't want to, right? So he doesn't go. This other woman had successfully dragged her husband to the support group. And you could tell. Some husbands want to go, but this one did not. she was saying, why don't you care? Like, why don't you cry? Why don't you? And he just finally like found his words and was like, you know, my wife can grieve in a home with like her things and the heat on and food in her belly, or we can all grieve in a tent because we don't have a roof over our heads. I go to work so that you can grieve in our home and don't have to be displaced. And that moved me so much because what I realized when I heard him say that, masculinity and femininity have a lot going on that we don't see across. And so for my femininity, it was all like love and tears and feelings. And I mean like cultural conditioning. I don't necessarily mean innate. And for my husband's, the way he sees his duty to the family, his role as a father is as a provider, right? And I wasn't even receiving what he was giving me. I was just criticizing it because it wasn't the form I wanted his support in, right? And also, okay, so he couldn't be there for the feeling stuff. I still deserve to get my feelings needs met, right? He couldn't meet that need because it was overwhelming to his system. Because what he was making it mean that I was crying all the time is that he wasn't doing his job as a man to make his wife happy. Well, I'm not going to be happy. My baby just died. It's not his job to make me happy. No one could make a bereaved mother happy, right? It's just not where we're at in that moment. But to sort of be like, okay, he can't do that. But I have friends who can. I have friends who will receive my phone call, who will come to my house, who will listen to me like really for hours crying. And that's what I ended up realizing is like, we can't be all things to each other, but I can receive what he's giving me. And then I can go elsewhere for what he's not. There's one little exception to the go elsewhere, which is like, if what is missing is sexual connection, that might not be what I would advise to go elsewhere. But for things like friendship, you can lean on your friend. For things like listening, it's okay and safe to lean on your friend.
Emotional support and, that listening ear. And that, like you said, it's absolutely, that was 100% spot on. We both, myself and my husband too, had this completely different meaning of what was actually happening. And I felt like it for quite a while, we weren't on the same page, but we didn't communicate that. There wasn't a moment in probably, I'd say a good couple of weeks that we couldn't communicate with each other in terms of how we were actually feeling. We would just end up fighting. And it's like you said, it's completely okay because the man is going to navigate it all so differently. Like they're going to go through the grief, they'll go through the process, but it's going to look differently to, like you said, to how you wanted to see it. My husband's not going to turn around and cry on my shoulder the way that I was crying on his, or understand my emotions because, of his upbringing, his conditioning. He has like this wall where he's like, no, I can't feel my emotions. So to look at him and go, well, you're not crying, you're not upset, what's happening? But that wasn't him as a person. He was doing something else to try and support me. And him going back to work to provide was, I guess, in a sense, his way of going, okay, this is what I need to do. But also what I was made aware of too is that was his space also for him to start to process what was going on, because he was alone. He was away from the environment, from me. He had his own space to think his thoughts, feel his feelings, and process what was happening. I guess it's like men, when they have a man's shed, they can escape and go down and just be with themselves. My husband doesn't have a man's shed, so
he has work.
He has work, yeah, and maybe work for him. I don't know for 100% certain, but I'm thinking maybe work for him was his way of being able to get out, get into a space that was out, like separate, and be able to navigate what was going on inside of his body. But then also, like you said, absolutely, if your needs aren't met in the relationship, find support, find someone on the outside of you that can meet those needs. Don't necessarily lump all of that onto your husband, your partner, when I knew for sure that that's never been what he's been good at. He's never been good at
Totally.
relationship, emotional stuff. So why am I expecting him to be good at it right now? So absolutely finding someone on the outside, a girlfriend, even a family member, someone that you can sit to and have that emotional connection, be able to meet that need and in a healthy way.
I often say that it's like 1,000 times better to get the support you need from your second choice, third choice, fifth choice, 100th choice individual than it is not to get it at all. Like what I found was that I was looking to my husband and being like, you're my first choice for all of these things, all of these needs. It was too much. It's too much. He couldn't do it. No human could do it. My needs were so high in that moment. And I think a lot of people, men and women both, have a really hard time just being like, my needs are enormous right now and honoring that and also worthy of being met, right? My needs are enormous. And so I'm going to ask for help meeting them. That was a big pill for me to swallow because I'm so proud and independent and I don't cry in public. Now I do, right? Yeah. And I want to just make a nod to the fact that it's not, you and I both have the stereotypical arrangement of these energies, but I've definitely met couples where it was reversed. Like I've met a couple where the husband drags his wife to support group because he needs to talk, right? Like it's not set in stone, and you're no less a man if you are the one who wants to own the feelings, right? And you're no less a woman if you're the one who wants to go out in the shed. But yeah, we have different needs. And often early on in my loss, one of my mom's best friends came over. Now, when I was born, she had a stillbirth. So first of all, testament to their friendship that their friendship survived that, right? But she sat me down and she was like, Kate, you and your husband are going to feel a lot of the same emotions, but not at the same time. There's going to be a day when you're feeling better and he's going to take a dive. And you're going to feel like he's bringing you down and the other way around too. But I was glad to have that perspective. I was glad to have that input because it just helped me. A lot of us, when we're in the relationship sort of spiraling and we feel isolated, it's a panic. We've just lost our baby. Are we going to have to lose our husbands too? And that's what it feels like. It feels like everything is so vulnerable. But when we can talk to each other about it and be like, this is actually a totally normal part. Reproductive years are stress on the relationship. They just are. It's stressful to be pregnant on a relationship. It's stressful to have a healthy baby on a relationship. And you better believe it's stressful to lose a pregnancy or lose a baby in a relationship. It's stress on the marriage. And that's okay. Many, many marriages are going to survive it. The ones that are worth saving, many of them are going to survive it. The ones that don't survive it, often there are other things at play where like maybe it wasn't worth saving. Not every relationship should survive this, right? But just to look around and be like, oh, I'm not doing it wrong. This is part of the experience. It sucks, but it's normal. That can help too, just to like take the pressure off of it. One of the things I ended up doing in my marriage was being like, wait, I am in it for the long haul. I'm going to trust that he is too. I don't know because I'm not a brain reader, right? A mind reader. But if we're in it for the long haul, we have time. Just because I want to talk it all out right now and it's not going well, what if it takes us 10 years to talk about it? What if it does, right? We got time. If we're really in it for the long, one of us could die and that would suck. But say we live to old age, we've got decades to figure this out. That was, for some people, it would make them panic to have friction last a long time. But for me, it took a lot of pressure off and gave me space.
One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss? because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how. Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a lost mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives. Yeah, that's so true. And, when I was going through it myself as well, I, yes, absolutely had the thoughts that crossed my mind that were like, he's going to leave me. I'm not worth it. We've tried so hard and, it's not going to work. But absolutely taking the pressure off yourself and going, you know what, if I look back, even if it's 6 months or a year that you're having this, really challenging time, but if you're both willing to work it out, that period of time is just going to be this small little blip on like the big overall journey. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you're in it to sort of think a little bit more broader and go, you know what, this is not actually the be all and end all right now. I can give myself space. We can work this out. I don't have to figure my life out in this moment. It does take that pressure off you, and it does give you that little bit of breathing space to go, oh, okay, I can just, in this moment, like, what is it that I need to navigate? What is it that's big for me? And just feel and sit and witness that without having to try and force things on yourself or the other person. It wasn't until probably a year after our loss that my husband opened up to me and how scared he was. Mm-hmm. We were able to get back to a place of neutral, like in our relationship. We weren't butting heads all the time. That initial friction and anger and resentment and all of that had been diffused. But he didn't actually open up until about a year later.
Was he afraid? Because I know you had a bleed. Was he afraid for your life, or was he afraid for your marriage, or both, when he was talking about how afraid he was?
He was afraid for me. Yeah. He felt powerless. He, like what everyone seems to do when we go through stuff that we don't know what's happening, we turn to Google, and that was his way of trying to control the situation and trying to support me. But whatever he tried to do, nothing was playing out the way that he was trying to make it play out. So he was scared for me. He was scared for how much he saw me in pain afterwards as well. And he's like, he saw me falling apart and he didn't know what to do to fix it. He felt powerless. And yeah, the marriage didn't play into it at all. As much as you think when you're going through it, that's it. That's what's going to happen. We're going to fall apart. We're going to break up. The marriage is going to be over. But that wasn't in any part of when he opened up that didn't factor in. It was all about how worried he was and scared he was for my health and my life and my mental well-being.
I really think my husband was afraid too. I could see it. I could see it in his face. He was afraid. We were awful at verbal communication at this time of our lives. It was not working, but we're quite tuned into each other non-verbally. And I could see he was afraid. And when he would say something, like sometimes he said something that landed really badly. It's still is sort of awful for me to say it, but I know what he meant. He was sort of like, is this like my wife now? Like, is this just who you are now? It's horrible. Right. And I was so offended because I just wanted him to see how strong I was being, even as I was falling apart into a puddle. Like, I have survived 2 months of bereavement. I have survived the darkest days of my life. I have survived. Like, that didn't happen in your body. That happened in my body. And here I am. I'm still alive. Right. But what he was reflecting back to me is my weakness, really, and his fear that, like, this was just who I am now. Like, we weren't going to have any happy times ever again because I wasn't able to be happy. And that's a legit fear. That's a legit fear. And that he was worried for me. And I think too, he was taking on, like, I am responsible for my woman. Like, I'm responsible for my wife. He's not. I mean, that's a fallacy. But if that's the weight he was feeling, of course, it would be terrifying. I mean, when you said your husband was feeling out of control, he was out of control. What he was feeling was true. He couldn't control this. This is so much bigger than any one person could control.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I really ended up doing, which did not help our verbal communication in the moment, but you mentioned how you were fighting all the time. That was me and my husband too. I would want to talk about it and I would try to talk about it and then we would just fight and then I would feel terrible and it would just go around and around and around. And finally I was like, this never ends well, Kate. So I just decided not to talk about it, which sounds, I mean, we talk about communication up, down, and sideways. But there are times when shutting up and not talking is actually more constructive to the relationship. And I was in one of those times and I figured it out and I did it. One of the things I love the most about the kind of couples work I do is communication is the second step. We don't start with it. We start with nervous system co-regulation, which is sort of what I self-discovered with my husband. Like, I would be like, okay, what makes you feel good after? Good in your marriage, good with your husband after. And it was always like touching or sitting near each other, doing something together, but not talking, like watching a funny movie together, patting him on the back, right? Like, touch worked for us. So, okay, do more of that. If it makes me feel better, I should be doing more of it. Anytime I can muster. And there's some days you can't muster a kind pat on your husband's back because you're just so mad that you just can't do it. Like, you just want to punch him, right? It's not going to land. But any day that you can do it, do it. Be as generous as you can be. And just see if it doesn't make you feel better. It did. It made my nervous system feel better. It made me feel safer in my marriage. It made me feel fonder towards him because he would relax into that, relax into my touch, relax into my company when I wasn't always on the attack, the verbal, booby trap him. And what I like about the method of coaching I do now is that, like, when I start with a couple, it's all things that are just designed to bring the nervous systems down together so that you get used to when you're together, the nervous system calms down. When you're together, that you want to be a cue to each other's nervous system to calm down. Whereas a lot of us in our marriages are a cue to each other to get activated because we're in the pattern of being at odds. So it's like Pavlov and the dog. We're no better than those dogs, right? You ring the bell, the dog wants food. When you see your spouse, you want to calm down. You don't want to go into fight or flight every single time. You don't want your partner to be the bell that gets your stress response going. So that is one of my biggest takeaways is that baby steps, stress response is everything. Just sit together. One of the simplest exercises we do, this is a tantric modality, and one of the simplest meditations we do is eye gazing. Just 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It's going to feel like a long time of just eye gazing. But see if you do that every day, just see if it doesn't calm you down around each other.
My husband and I have tried the eye gazing. We end up just laughing. So even if
That's very common. Very, very common.
that can break the ice as well. Like
Totally.
you're just like, okay,
Totally.
you literally start eye gazing and then you're like, okay, like both of you are like, this is awkward. And then you just both start laughing.
It's like in meditation when you sit down in meditation and you're like, laundry list, nope, stop. Grocery list, nope, stop. It's very clunky at first. And
Yeah.
it's all the worst to have. It's a lot of sensory input to be looking in someone's eyes. That's a lot of vulnerability. So yeah, laughing is a very normal response.
And it feels weird because you feel like, I've been with my husband since 2004. So it's, a long time. My Mac brain's just gone offline. But, to be able to look into his eyes and still feel that real awkwardness, I'm like, this is just weird. Like, why should I feel this way around you? I look at you all of the time. But it's so different. It is a very different space to be in when you're choosing to sit down and look at each other.
Yeah. And there are several levels of attention you can do with this. So this is just something you and your husband might try. You can do it with your attention on him. So anytime you like, this is awkward. Oh, that's about me. No, you have eyebrows that arch. You are getting gray in your beard. You have, right? Like the pupils are contracted. So you can bring your attention so you're 100% on him. And that has a certain energy. And if you do it right, he might actually sort of relax because it's sort of like, I got you. Like I am all on you, right? You can do it all the way in yourself where you're watching him and you just feel the energy of like being seen, like he's gazing at you and that's your experience that you're being seen. Or I've been taught it both of those ways, but by my own teacher, she does 50-50, where you're like 50% on your partner and 50% in yourself. And the meditation becomes just like noticing what's coming up in yourself and pulling 50% off to keep 50% on your partner. It's an interesting thing. The attention really changes the quality of it.
Yeah. And like you said, it is that awkwardness is me. So it's my thing that I have to work through. Like, what is it that's creating that inside of me? What's, and for me to be able to explore that too, because it's going to bring up stuff that you need to process as well. But I think it's a really beautiful thing when you're starting to reconnect with your partner. It's not just jumping, going gung ho into everything all at once. You've got to, like you said, build it baby steps. You've got to reconnect maybe in different ways that you have ever done before. That's what I noticed when we were trying to reconnect. It was, everything we had tried prior in our relationship wasn't sort of cutting it anymore. So we had to try different ways to reconnect, different ways to open up the communication, different ways to connect back to each other. And I think, like you said, that co-regulation with our nervous system. I remember when you said you don't want your nervous system, you don't want the thought of the other person or sound of the door opening.
Right.
And knowing that it's your husband walking in and your nervous system goes into fight or flight or shut down. So you don't want that to be the trigger. You want to have that co-regulation. You want each other's presence to be that safety, to be that calm, that groundedness, that sort of neutral feeling. So I think it's a beautiful thing that's where you start, because that's so important in building it back up, because our nervous system drives everything.
Totally. And another place where a lot of women in particular are armored in that way, are sort of like wound tight, is around touch. Particularly, we've not gotten deep into it, but a lot of women who go through some sort of reproductive hardship in their body come out the other side really disconnected from the body, and particularly disconnected from the sexually reproductive system, which is also the pleasure center, the sexual pleasure center of the body. And I just remember feeling so strongly that my body had betrayed me, that like it was my body's fault that this had happened. And it's not my body's fault, but that was my truth in the moment. And I just wanted to be able to like unzip my body and float out of it. Like that's how dissociated I was. And it can be really hard to feel safe enough to have sex at all, because sex is what led to pregnancy, is what led to the problems. Or if you're in infertility situations, sex is what didn't lead to pregnancy when it was supposed to, right? But either way, it led to this horrible failure, right? Another level, if you're grieving, is that a lot of women like don't feel worthy of pleasure. So they're going to actually block their own pleasure. So there's like this huge bracing against sex. Also, all of it happened in the pelvis. So there's some amount of birth injury and birth trauma that's at play as well, right? So that is, everything feels tightly wound and booby trapped in the pelvis. But even so, touch, I was talking about like gentle shoulder touch or like holding hands or like any touch can just, oh, if I respond to this, he's going to think I can have sex and I can't have sex. Like just guard against it. It becomes this huge protective mechanism. And it's generally, there can be a freeze response in it. It can be a fight. It can be a flight. It can be a runaway, but it's not, it builds this block against physical intimacy that, again, co-regulation of the nervous systems, and also knowing that touch does not have to escalate. Like touch is touch. You can just say, like, I often ask women, what is a touch you could fully receive today? And the answer I get the most often is back massage, no strings attached. Right? Well, I actually bet that if they told their husbands, if they've been bracing, but if they asked their husbands for a back massage and that's it, 20 minutes of back massage and then we go our separate ways, I actually bet most of these men would be so relieved that there was something they could give to their wives and it would feel so good to have it received that they would be more than happy to do it. When I work with couples, I don't see men being like, no, because I'm not getting mine. I see men being like, honey, of course. Like, of course, I would love to rub your back. Right? So anything that you can do that lets the nervous system relax, and sometimes putting strong boundaries on it to start, is how you do it. Ironically, the no strings attached back massage often does lead to sex. Ironically. Which is why I often say you have to have such strong boundaries on it that you actually don't. Like the first time you do it, the second time, whatever, but like the first time you do it so that your body knows, really, really, we're going to stop. We're going to practice touch that doesn't lead anywhere so that it doesn't feel like inevitable that there's going to be some sort of vaginal penetration at the end of this.
Yeah, I think it's actually reminded me of some of the times I've asked my husband to, like, if I've had a sore neck or a sore back, I'm like, can you just, and I have had to say it to myself. I'm like, I just need a back massage. That's it. Nothing else, just a massage. I'm really like, he does a really good job of massaging. So I'm like, I don't want to have to pay to someone else to do it when I know you're really good, but just get in there, like 5 minutes, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just, can you do that? And he oftentimes, if I preface, can I please get a back massage? And that's it. I do have to verbally say that to him, but he is more than willing to do it. And it does allow you to switch that part off in your head to know that, okay, this is it. Like, I can just sit and enjoy this and know that there's no expectation of you on the other side. And it allows you to relax into that and to feel more connected, because I guess that sort of feeds into love languages and stuff like that too, right? Like touch is one of mine as well. And, for me, just to have him do that is really reassuring. And I do often in those times feel more connected to him, but absolutely not being afraid of saying that. Like, don't be afraid to actually say, this is what I want. Like, this is what I need right now. Is it okay? Like, is that okay? I think it all started really from our loss, where I started to shift the way that I communicated and actually said what I meant. Like, there was a lot of time where I was people pleasing and I was saying what I thought people wanted me to say or what they wanted to hear. But after our loss, I was like, you know what? No, I don't want to do that anymore. So it was, and like you said, it was, now your communication, I think, with your husband is better after And my communication has been better after as well, because there's no fluff. It's just like, you know what? I say what I want. Like, this is not that, not in terms of I say what I want with no filter. I communicate what I need.
Right. Right. And one of the things about communication too is that I find that many people, particularly many women, are actually quite good at expressing themselves if they're not in people pleasing mode, right? But are we good at hearing each other? Not always, right? So in order to do verbal communication, start with listening. Start with really listening. And the key to listening is it's not about you. When you're listening, it's about them. It's just all about them. So if my husband does that thing where if we go back to that example where he was afraid that this was just how it was going to be now he is actually talking about me and it's still not about me, right? If I were to have to hold that and hear it in the full deep listening way, I would have to be able to be like, my husband is afraid. I hear that you're afraid. I hear that you're afraid that I will be this way and it will never be happy again, right? And that's it. Just reflect back the thing, and don't let it land like it's a barb at me. And if he can do that for me too, well, now we're building the kind of trust where we can actually say what we want to say. And it's like holding a certain benefit of the doubt too, and an appreciation for each other's autonomy where, yeah, it gets to be all about you for a couple of minutes, and then it gets to be all about me for a couple of minutes, and then it gets to, right? That is a kind of talking that I don't feel like the world really raises us to do. We have to teach ourselves.
Yeah.
Or in this case, you get a coach to come and teach you. Right? But it's like, it's helpful. It's helpful and it's powerful. And often couples will have this conversation where they get in that place of deep listening. We take turns. It's like 2 minutes each, 2 minutes one way, 2 minutes the other way. Often the things they're saying are things that they have said to each other 5,000 times in the last year, but they never heard each other. They like never heard what was really there. They heard what they were making it mean. They didn't hear what was being said. That's why my husband and I can communicate better now. It took a long time. We did not start talking like this in the first year, in the second year, in the third year. It took a long time, but we have it now. And it's not like we always exercise it, but we have it and we can use it. And it really helps.
Yeah. Like, we always slip. We're human.
Of course.
You slip into old patterns, and I still, like, you know better, but you're just like, nope, in this moment, I'm going to react. And that's just how it's going to be. But you have the tools. So, you know, it's, for the most part, the communication is okay. But then there's going to be moments of time where you do slip in and out, which, yeah, we're only human. But I think it is really important to be able to hear the other person. And that's what, like, sort of true communication should be, is it's not, as much as it is hard, like you gave the example before about your husband saying, you know, is this how you're going to be? You know, very easy to take that as a personal attack. Very, very hard to be able to take yourself out of that and go, okay, what is it that the other person is trying to say? But when you exercise that muscle enough, it becomes easier to do.
Can I agree with that? Can I honestly say, you know what? I'm afraid it's going to be this bad forever too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very honest. That's very real.
Yeah.
It's okay that he's afraid because I'm afraid too.
You're like, welcome to my party, like the party of one that I've been having. You know, it's
right.
Absolutely.
And now you're into something that's like, not only, I was not really able to do that in the moment, right? In the moment, I was not there. But now I look back on it and I'm like, I was afraid too. What if I could have just been like, yeah, this is scary. You know? I also would like to smile again someday. Right? And that is making it about me a little bit, but it's also being on his team.
Yeah. You're on the same page. And the thing is, like, if you don't actually communicate that, and take that as a personal attack, you'd never be able to open up and go, well, you know what? I feel the same. I'm scared too. But if you took that in and suppressed all of that, didn't do anything with it, it's only going to hurt you more and break down the relationship potentially with them, because they're saying hurtful things, but it's not necessarily, they may not have the words to be able to say it properly. But if you can meet them and really listen and go, well, is this kind of, are you afraid? Because I'm afraid too. And then they're like, yes, I'm afraid. And then you can come together and you can get on the same page and you can be like, oh, okay, finally, like, I feel like we get each other now. But also know that that's not always going to be the case. Like you said, you can have a good day, your partner is going to have a bad day. You'll have a bad day, your partner's going to have a good day. The days never, not all the time, match up. But there are times in that you can see eye to eye and meet and go, okay, yes, we get each other. In this moment, we get each other.
Yeah. One thing my husband would say to me sometimes that would really disarm my fight is like, hey, we're on the same team. Like, I'm on your side. When he would say that, it's like, oh,
sorry.
it still works. It's still something he has to say to me sometimes, but it really is disarming. Like, oh, you like want to be with me. You want to be on my side. You're here with me. Okay. Maybe I can like reposition myself a little bit. Yeah. It's amazing. Like, the people we're the closest to are sometimes actually the hardest ones to relate to when things are really fraught, because we're so entangled, because everything does feel so personal and there's so much history. And we're like, as much as I say that my husband and I are pretty good nonverbal communicators, which we are, also I can't read his mind. So I might project and not know I'm projecting, right? There's just a lot of layers of that. And it's hard and it's stressful.
Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing _PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM, and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.